Okay, we're here to talk about a few hot, fun, inspiring clean tech stories, a real opportunity story for those who have been on the fence about going electric, getting their first electric vehicle. It's really great moment for that, perhaps, and talk about a couple of stickier subjects or more controversial, you might say, when we get into a little bit of, well, we'll get there when we get there, but let's first cover a couple of fun, inspiring stories. All right, this first story is really a huge one. When we report on electric vehicles, electric car sales, we often are focused on new electric car sales, new electric vehicle sales. But most people in the US, and I think probably elsewhere around the world as well, but definitely in the US, most car buyers are buying used cars. So while the new car market is critical for, for changing the fleet, because that's the entry into the fleet that's on the road. It's actually for most consumers, what matters is the used car market. So we had sort of skyrocketing electric vehicle sales prices, electric vehicle prices, sorry, um, around in the COVID time and a little bit of out after the COVID era, really, or coming out of it, when prices for everything shot up. And in particular, there was a lot of demand for the new competitive, compelling electric vehicles that were on the market, long range, and not enough supply. And so, because of supply chain issues related to the COVID pandemic and related to inflation, some of which, was just driven by corporations, some of which was driven by supplies and also, driven by the Russia invasion of Ukraine, we we had just had massively higher electric car prices. And at the time it was like, oh wow, my car has appreciated from the price I bought it for. And a lot of people were keen to trade their cars in. I thought that was interesting and I thought about it, but then you're gonna buy an inflated, a higher priced new electric car as well. So it wasn't really I didn't really see the full logic in it. Maybe I'm missing something. But anyway, so the prices were high and people were happy about that who owned EVs. People who wanted a new EV were not particularly happy about it, but that was the situation at the time. But then as the supply chain has worked itself out, as the economy has rebounded, as inflation has gotten under control, car prices overall have come down, electric car prices have come down. And then in particular, toward the end of last year, some brands were seeing less demand than they had supply coming, or they had forecasted higher demand and perhaps also at higher prices, when they were making huge profits on these vehicles. And that led to automakers cutting prices on vehicles across the board, but in particular, as we're talking about electric vehicles. And Tesla is sort of the behemoth in the room. It's accounted for more than half of new electric vehicle sales in the US for a long time. And really it massively grew for years as we reported, and it massively grew its production capacity. And then toward the end of last year, it started getting to the point where production capacity was high and demand was not growing as much as it seems Tesla expected. So that led to all kinds of offers, extra packages, extra features for free, and reduced prices. So Tesla just kept cutting prices for a while, still sort of engaged in that. And the result, was that new Teslas cost a lot less, which of course meant used Teslas cost a lot less because who would pay more for a used Tesla than a new Tesla? And then you also have the case of more Tesla models, particularly popular ones, becoming eligible for the full $7,500 tax credit. You have the case of sort of dropping demand because from Democrats because Elon sort of went from left wing to very right wing uh, over time and even more and more so recently where he's endorsed Donald Trump and interviewed him the other day. So this has been a this is really, I think, quite significantly reduced Tesla consumer demand, in particular in California, which is the major market for Teslas in the US and one of the major markets for Tesla globally. And at the same time, aside from like leaving California, sort of criticizing it, and getting into federal politics, there's also just the case that, I mean, if you go to California, there's Teslas everywhere. So at some point you're saturating the market. At some point you're like, how much more can I get out of this market? Some people cynically even say that's part of Elon's calculus. He's tapped the left wing, he's tapped California. Now he's trying to get to the other side of the aisle to pull in buyers. I don't take that. I don't believe that's what's going on at all. But I mean, I think at some point he might think, oh well, at least this benefits, growing Cybertruck sales or something. I don't know. But the fact is, it seems to be the combination of that, of the politics and this highly saturated, market where multiple Teslas are on every corner, everywhere you go, has resulted in sort of I think it's becoming I think it's still not I think it's still not really acknowledged how big of an issue it's becoming, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see what the sales say. But in any case, the lower prices for new Teslas and new EVs in general has resulted in lower prices for used ones. There's also the case of Hertz, which bought thousands or tens of thousands and then decided, because of high accident rates, because of high tire costs, they would sell their Teslas, or a lot of them. I'm not sure now if it was all of them or a lot of them. Probably just, a significant portion. The both of those issues, by the way, I find interesting because I think people renting a Tesla are going to be tempted to be like, oh, how fast is it? How quick is it? When you own a Tesla like I do, and of course you've gone through a set or two of tires, you're like, oh, I'm gonna chill and just enjoy the chill, quiet ride and smooth ride and not burn up my tires. So and also not drive crazy. When you first get in a Tesla, you're tempted to test the acceleration. So I think a lot of renters were doing that, resulting in accidents and burning up tires. So those two things, as well as issues, Hertz had in general with maintenance and service and quick turnaround time on getting Tesla to repair and make repairs, led to Hertz and some other big fleet companies dumping a lot of EVs and a lot of Teslas in particular onto the used vehicle market, and that is really a great thing for used electric car buyers or used electric car shoppers. So if you're interested in getting your first electric car, the big news this week is that EV prices have dropped 20.5%, more than 20% in the last year in quarter two. So from quarter two of 2023 to quarter two of this year, prices are a fifth cheaper. So four-fifths of what they were a year ago. So, I mean, you really get some stunning, some really competitive pricing now for used electric cars. They're slightly more expensive on the average transaction price as a used hybrid or used pure gasoline or diesel car, fossil fuel car, but they're also significantly younger. So the average age, because the EV fleet, the EV market is still so young, the average age of a used EV is now 2.7 years, whereas the average age for the fleet overall is 4.5 years. And of course, the average age for hybrids or conventional fossil fuel powered vehicles is going to be even higher than 4.5, because that 4.5 average includes the EV 2.7 average, which you know how that works, right? So they're also driven less. The average used EV that's been sold in quarter two was 29,430 miles compared to 52,478 miles for the full market. So generally, you're getting a much newer, less driven car when you buy an electric car, a used electric car, at just a few $1,000s more. And then, you count in the gas savings and all that, and you're really, it seems like a no-brainer that now is a great time to buy a used EV. Whether that market will get even more attractive in the next year, I don't know. Nobody knows. Whether Tesla will roll out a $25,000 vehicle in a year or two, that's the hope. But, if that happens, that could drive down used EV prices again. But really, it seems like a prime time to get a used electric car. These prices are really, you're not going to do much. I don't think you're going to do much better than this. So that's one story. Second story is, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft are getting more popular, getting more developed, getting more capable, and we're starting to see sales and rollout. So one electric, we'll call it VTOL, electric VTOL company, um, was about to, it wanted to roll out, Volocopter wanted to roll out for the Paris Olympics, but because of certain delays that they couldn't control, they couldn't quite make it for the Paris Olympics. Unfortunately, that would have been cool. But we do have another company, Archer Aviation. Archer is aiming to get its midnight is the name, midnight aircraft to Los Angeles. It's developing vertiports, places to land in the Bay Area, in the Los Angeles area. So it wants to have a network in place for the Los Angeles Olympics in 4 years, and even for the World Cup in 2 years, which will be in various cities around North America, but one of them is Los Angeles. So it's exciting to see. I think we're going to really see electric air taxis, a taxiing people around. This vehicle carries up to 6 people for the Olympics and the World Cup, and hopefully sooner. It's an exciting time. Archer has also recently made sales to United Airlines and Southwest Airlines, so it's getting interest from serious big players in the industry. So all good signs. Just a brief news item. China's diesel use has dropped considerably this year compared to last year. The reasons argued by the U.S. Energy Information Administration are partly drooping economy, but also, the huge rise in plug-in vehicle sales. Recently, we saw that over 50% of vehicle sales in China last month in July were plug-in vehicles, or new energy vehicles, as they call them there. A significant portion of those are full electrics. So it's really the market in China, which is by far the largest auto market in the world, and approximately equals to the rest of the world's EV market combined, is just booming. So it's a rapid, amazing transition, and we are already seeing effects of that in declined diesel use in the country, it seems. We got the sticky news. There's two items. I mean, one is that, well, let's start with some positive. So, 2 years in, the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 has been a huge benefit to developing battery factories, battery supply chain, solar factories in the United States. It has given a lot more incentive to EV buyers, including Tesla buyers, who had no federal incentives anymore until this was passed and revived their federal tax credits. And yeah, it's just made a huge difference for the U.S. Manufacturing and economy of the clean tech sector. Europe has had to respond by trying to create their own incentives to try to keep more producers in Europe, and it has interestingly benefited red states, Republican-leaning states, and GOP Republican districts more than anyone else. So, despite the fact that this was driven by a Democratic administration, a Democratic Congress, which we had for 2 years, and basically no Republicans supported or voted for it, it has supported Republican states and districts the most. So that's a positive thing. And with Joe Biden pulling out of the election, the campaign, the election, presidential race with Donald Trump, and Harris taking over. Our whole report card series on Donald Trump versus Joe Biden on clean tech matters and climate action is sort of, it's not as useful. But Mike Bernard came back now that Kamala Harris has picked a vice presidential running mate, Tim Walz. Um, she she's got her own record on climate, and he's got his own record from being in Congress and Minnesota governor. So Mike Bernard did a refreshed kind of analysis looking at both of them compared to the Trump administration and compared to the Biden Harris ticket. So the conclusion is that this is actually even a much stronger ticket for US climate action. Harris had one of the strongest platforms in the Democratic primary 4 years ago, and Walz has had an even stronger record on this. So combined, and it's a really great long article on what they're offering, what they're bringing to the table. Combined, this is just the most climate action ticket we've ever seen, and it's going to be an amazing presidency if they're elected. On the other side of the aisle, we've got Donald Trump, and unfortunately, that also involves Elon Musk now. So if you're not here to hear about it, you can check out. But basically, Elon has gotten behind Trump for almost, I mean, basically unfathomable reason or just very illogical reasons. Some bit of spite, bit of issues with very niche topics, and yeah, we don't need to get into all that. But they had a long conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, this week, and Elon just said some wildly ridiculous, bonkers things on climate change and global warming, global heating that, I mean, they completely go against things he said just a few years ago. It's mind-boggling. So, and then, The Guardian wrote this article saying that it was the dumbest climate conversation ever. Um, in that article, they quoted a famous climate scientist, Michael Mann, and it was, Bill McKibben is sort of gets more of the headlines for being more famous, but Elon responded, I guess, that the whole Guardian staff don't know as much about climate as Elon does, and Michael Mann responded on X. Those quotes are of me, if you want to discuss this topic anytime, I'm available. Ironically, Musk had responded to Michael Mann a few years ago with strongly positive climate action, anti-fossil fuel statements. I don't have them. I didn't pull them up for this, but I'll put them in the article on CleanTechnica. That, I mean, they're just like, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like they're polar opposite kinds of statements and arguments. And he was responding to Michael Mann on X, affirming some of what Mann was saying, but even amplifying it, saying more. So it's just wild. It's really, I mean, of all the craziest stuff Elon Musk has said in the past few years or tweeted, this gets up there with some of the craziest. I mean, it really is mind-boggling. It's really baffling and bonkers. So yeah, it's just crazy. And then we've got the Project 2025, which growing links, I mean, many links to Trump, but is basically aiming to just completely ignore the climate crisis and try to dismantle all federal action on the climate crisis. So, I mean, it's night and day. It's as polar opposite as it gets, with the strongest potential climate ticket in the history and the worst, I mean, the worst climate ticket in history, because I mean, really looking to dismantle everything we're doing. Final story, we've got Jose Pontes here breaking out a new regular report series, which is something he did ages ago, years ago, on the EV sales blog spot where he started doing what he does. And so he looks at does a bit of a summary analysis of the big three auto markets, EV markets: China, Europe, and the US. And then he goes into the remaining top 10, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Brazil, India, Thailand, and Israel. And then he does a few other market highlights, markets that are notable for various reasons. Turkey, UAE, Malaysia, Indonesia, Russia, Mexico, Taiwan, and New Zealand. So it's a really fun, quick summary of trends and markets that compares them. I think people love it. I love it. I think it's gonna be a really popular new series from Jose Pontes out of Portugal and Belgium. He's half and half. Well, that's it for the news update today. We'll have more of these going forward. Thanks a lot for watching or listening, and we'll see you soon.